This is Lee. Lee is a member of the guild archetype. The guild archetype specializes in hiding cards at the bottom of their deck and then utilizing those cards in different ways. This is to kind of mimic their underground, dark dealings, and they're setting up things like plans and all these kinds of like dark dwellings kind of are themed to be under the deck. So when they're hiding or doing something, it's under their deck. I don't know. I think that's as much as I can give it for now. But Lee fits into that. And Lee, we're going to go over his lore today, his backstory, and then we're going to go over his kit and how he plays and fits into the guild archetype. So, without further ado, let's talk about Lee's backstory and where he is in the world. So Lee was a friendly town fisherman. He provided lots of food and support for his village that was a riverside village. But this came at kind of a cost. In the daytime, he would be a friendly fisherman, and at night, he doubled as this highly skilled assassin. This allowed him to live quite comfortably with his wife, who was pregnant with their first child, and hoping that if he could amass a large sum of money through this skill that he has, as well as obviously being a fisherman, that they could secure a future for their child and they wouldn't have to do any of these bothersome jobs anymore. Or not them, but specifically Lee. His wife has nothing to do with this. So he only uses his knives or his blades for contracts that he deems are never innocent. Like there is no possible way this person could be innocent. So in a way, he's kind of judging the contracts that he gets, so that there's not like a lot of morality that's gone to him as far as him doing a naturally evil deed. So one day, like all good stories, Lee is approached by the Duke. And the Duke is the leader of a dukedom that is a part of the Cat Empire. And Cat Empire is just a name that we have for now. We haven't named anything besides just naming them by the species that is the ruling party. So the Cat Empire has an offshoot of a dukedom, and that the Duke of that dukedom came to Lee for a job. And that job was to take out 2 couriers. So Lee takes a job for a ludicrous amount of money, something that would probably get him and his wife out of the small town that they're in and allow them to live for the rest of their lives, unburdened by anything else but their own small problems. So he tracks down the target and he discovers that they are diplomats of the skunk and squirrel armies, which are exchanging peace treaties. And the idea was that there is a war between the skunk and squirrel armies that has been ongoing for a lengthy amount of time, and it's just been an awful ordeal for the entire region where Grit is set in right now. So they were exchanging peace treaties, and upon this, he realizes that the Duke wants the war to continue 99 out of 100 times for profit. So despite being an assassin, his moral code takes over and he refuses to complete the mission. So time passes, and with some budding news from some contacts that he has, Lee knows that the Duke, in his defiance, will show no mercy to Lee and his family. So he follows a contingency plan that him and his wife had set up way long ago in case of something like this that could have happened, and they were to meet at a secret rendezvous point somewhere in the hills away from the village. However, arriving at the spot, he finds a close friend of his from the village, of this double life that he lives, instead of his wife, who informs him that the Duke had personally come and had slain his wife as punishment for him not completing the contract that he had taken. Stricken with grief, Lee realizes he never got to see his wife again after taking this contract, after trying to make his way back home. He'll never meet his daughter, all these things that he could have done had he got to see her one more time kind of all broke down in front of him. So with nothing really left at his riverside village, he returns to his second home that he lived before falling in love and leaving his quote-unquote life of crime, and that is with the guild. Lee is we call him an OG member, an OG member of the guild that was there near its most modern change. The guild has been around forever, like for years and years and years before Lee's time, but Lee is one of the more founding members of the more modernized guild, if that makes sense. But he left at one point when he met his wife, and now he's come back after he's lost his wife again. So with this happening, because of his moral code, because of he's got nothing left to live for, at least, love-wise, he now fights really just to survive and to live within the guild. Taking any contract, any mission, he knows he can complete it. He knows his skills, because this in the guild is where he honed his skills in the first place. And he lived up to his reputation as a deadly and ruthless assassin that did his job and did it well. But for him, it was more of just an emptiness he carried that no amount of violence or vengeance could possibly fill in any way. So Lee takes his jobs and he does what he's supposed to and nothing more. As their more modern changes have come to the guild, their current leader, Reginald, plans for them to compete in the arena. And with that, Lee understands the weight that the arena now places inside of him. There is an anxiousness as well as an excitement, because if Lee were to win in the arena, he could ask to see his wife one more time, a chance to speak with her and say goodbye, and kind of get that closure that he really needs to be able to move on and regain that moral part of him that was kind of lost when she was lost. So he hopes that the gods will grant him this opportunity. So that is Lee's story. It is not as refined and specific as some of the other stories we've had, but that's his story that we're going with. And once we start to fill in a little bit more of the gaps and the connections, I think that Lee will be a much more pronounced character for us, because he was one of the first ones that we thought of, kind of like, not as an afterthought, but just like he was the first guild character we thought of, who we knew we wanted in the guild, and then kind of started to spread out from there. So his story hasn't been fully told, I think, yet. So now let's go into Lee's kit. Lee is an angry character for the guild, and his ability is once per turn, as an action, you can hide 2 cards from your hand. Hide is a keyword that you'll see a lot of, and this means hide cards from your hand, which is the same thing. Hide means to place cards on the bottom of your deck from your hand in any order you want. However, sometimes it'll also say hide cards from in play or hide cards from somewhere else, and it essentially means put them on the bottom of your deck in any order. So going forward, that's what hide means. And then it says ready each of your active weapons. So right now you can only have 1 active weapon equipped to each hero, but there are already plans and cards and stuff that will kind of change and fiddle with that. So this is just future proofing. So Lee likes to make attacks, and he also likes to use weapons. This is things. And so his signature weapon is feather knives. As an action, you can exhaust this and bury 1 card. Bury is another keyword that means to discard that many cards from the top of your deck. So bury 1 card just means place the top card of your deck into your discard pile. It says deal 1 damage, and that's not so good. This attack deals +1 damage for each previous attack this turn. So the more you attack, the more feather knives does. And with Lee's ability, you can activate or you can reset your feather knives more often to get more value out of it. So the idea specific is Lee and his feather knives are kind of one of the same, where they kind of want to do a bunch of things and a bunch of attacks. And that's his kit. That's what he's centered around. You hide cards to use your knives, and then everything is in relation to that. This is the main card that he wants to use all the time. So let's take a look at his defense card. There's a 1-cost defense event that says prevent damage equal to the cost of each active weapon. And the wording is actually quite old, because weapons used to be in the deck and they used to have a normal cost, but we took it out because they were kind of pivotal and we wanted them to always be available. So that's how we got the Armory deck. So this should really say for each weapon you have in play. It's not super thematic. I think this could be better in some way. It should probably prevent like a static amount of damage. And then the second ability is where the card really shines. And that is exhaust a weapon equipped to your active hero to draw 1 card. So the idea is that you can prevent damage with this defense card, and then exhaust your weapon that you have equipped to your hero to draw that card back, essentially making this free. It's a 0-cost card. And then you can activate Lee's ability to put that back up. But that requires, it requires a lot of setup. This card's almost really good. I think the synergy here is there. It's just not as good as it could be. But the idea is that your weapon now becomes a functional resource, kind of. All right, Ammo Up is a 1-cost skill that says your opponent chooses one. You ready your active hero, or you ready your active weapons. So this choose effect is also a guild thing. So there's obviously something that you want to do. There's a goal you have when you play a card like this, but your opponent then has kind of the ability to give you something else instead of that, and that's the kind of theme of you being paid off or being kind of like contracted to do something else. So this choice effect is really for your opponent to be like, what are my 2 bad options here? I could do the thing they want to do, or I could have them do something else that's also not good for me, but is maybe better than the other thing. So these choose effects cards are actually quite difficult to make, because oftentimes you have to assume that you really don't have a choice. Your opponent and you don't really have a choice. You want one option and your opponent doesn't want that one option. And it's pretty clear generally which option that is. So as we go over more of the guild characters, we're going to see this more and more, that this is really hard to make into a card that works. So I like the idea, but I think it could be better. Also the art, once again, the art is just AI stuff. It's all over the place with Lee's kit. I feel so bad for him. I just took the first things I could get. So Ammo Up is really good. You ready your Feather Knives or Lee, and both of those things are good. You're looking for 3 damage or even more 3 damage here, or even more damage here. So it's all good. And with his ability, you can ready it again, and it gets crazy. So oftentimes your hero will be readied with this, just because it's not the knives. Sharpen Weapon is a 0-cost skill that says discard the bottom card of your deck. If that card is neutral or shares a class with your active hero, ready an active weapon. So this is just another way for you to ready your Feather Knives at a 0 cost, but because it's 0, it can't just say ready your weapon. That's way too powerful. So there has to be some sort of effect or some sort of extra cost, and it comes at the cost of a card you've set up on the bottom of your deck, and it also comes at your deck size. And the quicker you go through that, the more you're going to take these recycled hits. Whenever you recycle your deck, you essentially take a hit of damage to your stamina. So it needs some way to deal with that, and it works really well with the guild, because the guild sets up cards and you can kind of set up this to always hit. So it really works super well with Lee, because his ability says you get to hide 2 cards from your hand. So as long as one of those cards is neutral or it's an angry card, this will hit 100% of the time. So it allows you to use your knives, attack with Lee, use his ability, set the knives as active, and then swing again with that. Then play sharpen weapon from your hand, discard the card that you just hid there to ready your knives again to swing one more time with it. So it's really, really good. From Up High is a 3-cost attack, and it has a cost modifier which says if you have hidden at least 2 cards this turn, which hidden is an derived. I don't know. It's the same thing as hide, but it's just saying if you've placed at least 2 cards from somewhere on the bottom to the bottom of your deck, this card gets -3 cost. That's a lot. It makes it free. And then it says deal 4 damage. So 4 damage is below the 3-cost curve. It is the same as a 2-cost card, but it can be free. And so it's possible that this card needs to go down to a 3 damage card, because since it's always free, it's 99% of the time free. You really want to be able to proc this, having hidden 2 cards, and make it a 0 cost. So it's hard, because once this goes into your tenacity, you have a crazy amount of block power. And I think that's more of a system problem than a card problem. Like the fact that you play a card in and it's immediately an impressive deep parrying tool with its ability on the tenacity to flip. It just is something that needs to be paid attention to, because it's a 0 cost for 3 is very good. So this damage should probably be reduced to especially more mimic Lee's attack value. So that way it's like basically like when you're using your ability, you're not only getting your knives, but you're also getting a second attack with Lee. So maybe this could possibly say just prepare your active hero, but I really like that it has a damage value. It's very simple and straightforward, and it can be played in a lot of other characters in the guild because hiding cards isn't that hard. So I like the way it is. It's just, I think systematically, this 3 cost is a problem so easily to get into your tenacity. Okay, this is a 1 cost reposition. This is neutral, so anybody can play this card. It's an enhancement, and it says after you hide 1 or more cards, your attacks deal +1 damage until the end of this turn. This card can be good. So obviously this works with Lee's ability because you hide 2 at once, but for this card's effect, it means that you only get this value once. So this really counts the instances that you hide cards, not the amount of cards that you hide. So for Lee, that just means he gets to use this ability and gets an additional damage, not only for his knives, but also for himself. So if he activates the knives, let's say once, to deal 1 damage, he uses his ability and he can ready the feather knives, and he activates reposition. So these deal +1 damage, and they already deal +1 damage because there was 1 previous attack. That you now have a 3 damage feather knives, so you can swing for 3. Or the smarter thing that you probably do is swing with Lee for 4. In this case, I guess they're the same, right? You swing for 4 because of the reposition proc that gives all of your attacks +1 damage, and then use your knives, and now you've gotten this up to 2 other attacks and this, so this is another 4 damage. So the idea is that Lee kind of caps out, that his feather knives and him kind of make, and from up high, all kind of deal the same amount of damage because he's the one doing all these things. It really should feel like his value is like what we're aiming for here a bunch of times. So Lee can make a lot of attacks. He's very, very, very strong, very, very fun. I think the hard part for Lee is that a lot of most of his stuff doesn't necessarily work super 100% well with everybody else. I think that'll have to be something we talk about when we go over the guild archetype. So yeah, that is Lee. As you can see, Lee is very much centered around his weapon, and that's on purpose. I think we had the guild at one point centered around their weapons, but that kind of trailed off when it wasn't as easy to work with as I thought. So yeah, that's Lee. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I mean, if you got this far, amazing, wonderful, thank you so much. And wherever you are in the world, have a good day, night, weekend, morning, whatever. And I hope to see you in the next one. See ya.